everyone, it's Sid at Cool Moviegram, your source for everything about cool films. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon for further content. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about 5 films which I say are heavily underrated. They're either critically panned, they didn't really make much of an impact at the box office, or they just they don't really get the recognition, and they just get a bad reputation when they don't deserve it. So of course these are 5 films that I've chosen. Of course there are many other films which are very underrated, which a lot of people maybe don't like, but they aren't as bad as many people suggest that they are, be it critics or even fans themselves. I try not to spend too much time dwelling on what critics might have to say about a film, because a lot of the time the critics, they have a very kind of a one-sided agenda. Maybe I might do a video in the future about certain films which I think were just severely overrated and they're not as great as they've been made out to be by critics or whoever. But yeah, I'll get started with the list. First film on the list is The Big Hit, directed by Kirk Wong. It's from 1998. This was his he's a Hong Kong director, but this was his Hollywood debut. It stars Mark Wahlberg, Lou Diamond Phillips, and China Chow and Christina Applegate, and many others. It's an action comedy which is about a hitman who seems to be a really nice person. He's an assassin who works for a mob boss named Paris and ends up getting involved in a kidnapping of a wealthy heiress of a Japanese millionaire. It turns out that she's the goddaughter of his boss Paris. And at the same time, you get to see how the personal life of Melvin is kind of like, it's a mess. He's got a gold digging fiance and a girlfriend that's also just taking advantage of him. And he seems to be taken advantage by his colleagues and such as well. And it's just the whole situational comedy about some of the other characters. I thought Lou Diamond Phillips, especially, as his rival slash colleague Cisco, another hitman, is absolutely hilarious. This is probably one of the funniest performances that he's actually given. And yeah, this film only made about 20 mil at the box office, and it didn't really get much recognition. And when it came out, the only time I noticed it was when I saw it on Sky. And I thought this was an absolute hoot. I thought this is a great, funny film. I mean, the action sequences were brilliant, considering that Kirk Wong is directing, and the movie was produced by John Woo. So, I mean, the action side of it was actually pretty good. The jokes were really funny. It was actually a funny movie where the characters all seemed like, they had, even though they were in this really serious kind of like profession, they had a very goofy side to them. And you could tell that the cast themselves were having a great time just making this movie. You could tell they were having fun, be it in the action sequences or even during some of the comedy moments. And definitely this should have been a lot more appreciated, should have been a lot more successful, and should have had a lot more recognition than it actually got. And I'm surprised that Kirk Wong never directed any other Hollywood movies after this, because I know it's a completely different tone of film that he had made and from his previous stuff. But I thought, yeah, this is actually a pretty good film. Next one is Empire Records, 1995, directed by Alan Moyle, and again stars Liv Tyler, Renee Zellweger when they were really young, and a host of others. Employees at a record store are trying to save their jobs, and as well as sort out any of their own differences, whilst the company is the company is trying to take over the independent record store that they work at. I mean, this was a great film. It had great performances. The humor was spot on, and I thought the way that it was directed felt really natural. And there's a lot of talk about music and such, and It's great. I mean, this one's got a really big cult following since its release. I mean, it's still showing us 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is totally not doing the film justice. And I thought it was a fun movie. It was actually really, it was not exactly serious, but it was kind of like light-hearted, but at the same time, it had some sort of a profoundness to it. It's about like these people who work a menial job, but then they find their kind of like enjoyment, their, happiness in this actual job. And even though they get on normally really well, but they have a cool boss and everything, but sometimes there can be clashes with their personalities and such. Yeah, definitely. I would say this is another film that I would say, yeah, worth the watch. Third film on my list is The Corruptor. This was 1999, directed by James Foley, starring Chow Yun-fat and Mark Wahlberg, featuring Rick Young and Byron Mann. Yeah, this film, it's like a crime thriller about a young upstart detective decides to take up a job in the New York Chinatown district, which is headed by Nick Chen, played by Chow Yun-fat, and not everything seems to be what it is when he gets to learn about the politics and the traffic between the cops and like the triad gangs. There's always a line that's there that's kind of like that's almost been blurred between legal, illegal, good, bad, right, wrong. And again, this film, it had some great performances. I mean, the script was actually quite gripping, and the action sequences again were really good. And it was actually quite nice to see the fact that Chow Yun-fat had actually done this was his second film in Hollywood after The Replacement Killers, which didn't really do so well. And I thought this was actually better than Replacement Killers when it came out. When I saw it, I thought this is actually pretty cool. And if you enjoyed films like the underrated Year of the Dragon by Michael Cimino, directed but starring Mickey Rourke, you like this movie. It's actually quite it's very pulpy, meaty, and like really kind of intriguing. He had a great cinematography, a brilliant car chase, and just great entertainment all right round. The next film is Judgment Night, 1993, directed by Stephen Hopkins, starring, who's got so many people: Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr., Stephen Dorff and Dennis Leary, Jeremy Piven's in this as well. It's about takes place in one night where a group of best friends are they're on the run after witnessing a murder committed by a major drug dealer, and he's trying to hunt them down. I mean, this film was great. I mean, it's not like the most overly complex of plots, and it's not filled with like any rich kind of like character details, but the characters were solid enough. The cast was pretty good too, and it moved at a great pace. I mean, the pacing in this film was really kind of like breakneck, really fast. It just gets you kind of sucked into this world. The fact that everything takes place in one night, and this was actually a great movie. I'm surprised that like it wasn't appreciated. I think it was way ahead of its time because it was quite a dark film, considering it had these really popular stars in this film. At the time, they were kind of like hot names in Hollywood. But I was surprised to learn that this film was actually a box office and a critical failure. I mean, it certainly did not deserve the reputation that it got at the time. I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about by other YouTubers and whatnot about how great this film actually is. Yep, I totally agree. This was a great movie. I saw this movie many years ago again on when I was young. I saw this on TV, and I thought this was actually a really cool movie. I loved it. The final film on my list is Death Warrant, directed by Darren Sarafian, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's a 1990 film. Now, yeah, this was made during the time when Van Damme was actually on the rise. He was actually making successful films. He had already done films such as Kickboxer, Bloodsport, AWOL. Cyborg wasn't really as well received at the time. But yeah, Death Warrant definitely. I mean, this has got like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I remember when I watched it when the first time I watched it as a kid, I thought it was interesting, but then I watched it again not so long ago, and I thought this is actually a really good film. This is actually a good thriller. It was written by David Goyer, who went on to write the screenplays for the Dark Knight trilogy, and he'd done like Blade, and he directed the third Blade as well. But let's not talk about Blade Trinity. That was a terrible film. But yeah, this was actually a great movie. It's about a police officer goes undercover into a prison after finding out that prisoners are being reported missing. They just disappear. And of course, he uncovers an trafficking kind of ring that's taking place within the prison, and he wants to find out who's involved. I mean, he's got some great action sequences, and it's just kind of thrilling. I mean, okay, Van Damme's never been known for being the greatest actor. He ain't no Al Pacino. He ain't no Robert De Niro or such. But it was a great action movie. This was actually pretty good. It doesn't really get mentioned much. I mean, there's always talk about whenever there's mention regarding Van Damme's best movies during his heydays, which is from like the late tail end of the 80s up until like about the mid 90s. You get films such as Bloodsport, Kickboxer, AWOL, Double Impact, Hard Target, Time Cop, and all those kind of ones. Though they always pop up as well, but Death Warrant always kind of gets left out, and I'm thinking this is a criminally underrated Van Damme film. I mean, maybe it's because it's not about like a fight tournament or anything, or he doesn't go through like an extensive training sequence, but this was actually a decent movie. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, I wouldn't say it's kind of like on the same level as like Universal Soldier or Hard Target and like the Hard Target or even like Bloodsport and such, but this was actually a good movie. This was solid entertainment. I mean, that's what you want from like these cheesy early 90s and late 80s kind of action movies. It's just that you want to be entertained. I mean, that's the whole purpose of making these kind of films. And definitely, this was a good film. This was a very kind of like, criminally underrated film. People say it's not that good, but I'm thinking, are you guys watching the same movie I'm watching? I mean, considering we all know how many limitations people like me and Van Damme have in terms of acting, but the film was actually pretty good. I mean, I would say, I mean, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. And yeah, I mean, I'd say I check out all five of these films. I mean, there's probably many more that I can't just rattle off the top of my head. That I've seen so many films, but there are many other films that I've seen. I would say they're underrated. They don't get the appreciation that they deserve, be they Hollywood or Far East films. But this definitely, these are my five underrated films that do deserve a second look. Uh, be sure to follow me on Instagram and the usual, and I'll see you on my next video. If you can, please leave a comment and let me know what is, in your opinion, the most underrated film that you've seen. I mean, a film that gets a lot of flack, but you don't think it's that bad.